Today we are going to focus mainly on word problems. So before we were strictly doing case 1 word problems where I told you the slope and the y-intercept, and today we're going to do a mixture of case 1s, 2s, and 3s and what they look like for word problems. So just as some quick refreshers, I'm going to make sure we realize in a word problem the y-intercept is the starting amount. Okay, so whether you start in debt or with money, for example, that would be a y-intercept. And then the slope is going to be usually with the word per or for each, for every, something like that. And that's how fast the object is changing over time. You want all of your final answers to be in slope-intercept form. Okay, that's really important. That means I want to see it as y, mx, and b in that order. And then linear equations, again, there's 3 possible cases. So case 1, I'll actually tell you the slope and the starting amount. That's the easiest. Case 2, I will not tell you one of them. So usually you get the slope and a point for a case 2. And then a case 3, I don't tell you any of the slope or y-intercept information. I will actually just give you 2 ordered pairs. So we're going to see what those look like. And then this is going to be really important for the word problems. We got to know our formulas. So your case 1 formula is the slope-intercept form. So no work. Case 2 is this point slope form, and you have to fill in the 3 blanks. And then case 3, it's 2 parts. Part 1 is this formula, the slope formula, and then part 2 is your case 2 formula. So you make sure you're using the right formulas for each problem. So we're not going to do all of these notes today because it does get to be a lot. It's all word problems, but we're going to do a couple examples each video, and hopefully that makes things a little easier. So I am telling you that this is a case 1 problem. I will not be telling you that on a quiz or a test. So you want to make sure that you understand why it's a case 1. So it says a damaged plane is flying at a height of 5,000 feet. That's how high the plane is. It is losing altitude at a rate of 80 feet per minute. So I see a slope indicator right there. That means 80 is my slope. And they actually tell you how high the plane started out. So this is why it's a case 1, because I tell you the the starting out height. And they also tell you how fast the height is changing. So if they give you both, it's a case 1. It does say write a linear equation. So that means I want to see y equals mx plus b. And it says define your variables. So I always actually define my letters first. So we have x and y, because there's 2 objects in the problem. So each object has to be assigned a letter. So it looks like one of the objects is feet and the other is minutes. And as a cheat, remember time is always x. So over the course of minutes, your feet in the air is changing. So now I'm ready just to use my case 1 formula. So my slope is going to be negative 80 because the plane is going down. X plus the start out height was 5,000. There's your formula. So you're going to use this to answer all the follow-up questions. The plane is an hour and a half from the nearest airport. And it says, can the plane make it to the airport before it needs to make a crash landing? So here's where we need to be careful. The first thing I would do is I would go ahead and take a look at this. It says hours, but we're dealing with minutes. So the first thing I would do is change 1.5 hours to 90 minutes. So what I would do is I would just use this 90 minutes in the formula and see if that can help me answer the question. So we're going to use negative 80. I'm going to put 90 in for x because x is minutes. I'm going to add 5,000. So when I do that, I get negative 7,200 plus 5,000. Which is negative 2,200. And since we used minutes, we get feet out of it as our answer. So I'm going to write this. Now, this is where you want to take a look at your answer and be like, something's wrong here. The plane cannot be negative 2,200 feet in the air. That doesn't make sense. So look at the question. It says, can the plane make it to the airport? or does it need to make a crash landing means an emergency landing? So in other words, you want to make sure that, if 90 minutes go by, you're still in the air. So clearly this plane is underground. So the answer is no. You cannot make it to the airport at that rate with that time. So that plane's going to have to stop a little sooner so it doesn't hit the ground. And then letter C says, what is the maximum time the plane can stay in the air? So the first thing I like to do is figure out what letter am I asking you to figure out. It says, what is the time? So that means you're finding X. Well, if you're finding X, I must have given you Y somewhere. So there's two ways to go about this. I always tell my kids, when in doubt, 0 is the way out. So chances are, if you don't have a number, use 0, and you're probably right. The reason that it is okay to use 0 is stay in the air basically means anything above 0 feet. So 0 is like the cutoff. You're not in the air once you're at 0 feet. So if you don't have a number and you're stuck, go with 0. So I'm going to put 0 in for Y, but I'm going to leave X in the problem. So you're actually just solving this equation. So we get negative 5,000 equals negative 80X. So I am going to get, when I divide, I will get 62 and a half. And I always label my answer. It said, what is the time? So time is in minutes. So the plane at this rate can stay in the air 62 and a half minutes. So if it needs to travel further, it ain't going to make it. We got to stop the plane. The next example is a case 2. So now you get to see a case 2 word problem for the very first time. John started a new lifting program, and he's eating to try to gain weight for football. On his new plan, he gains 1.2 pounds per week. It says 3 weeks into his routine, he weighs 176. So the first thing you need to do is realize, okay, the slope is 1.2. Because it says per, that's my slope indicator. So he's gaining 1.2 per week. That's the rate. However, it did not say what John's starting weight was. What I do know, though, is it takes 3 weeks to make 176 pounds. So when I define my variables, I just want to make sure I'm careful, and I know X is the number of weeks. Okay, time always is X. And the other thing we're talking about is his weight, or number of pounds, however you want to say it. So once you have this, you should realize, okay, point, slope, it's a case 2. I must use the case 2 formula. So 176 will go in the first spot, your slope goes in the middle, and your X goes in the last. And then we're just going to go ahead and solve that equation. So go ahead, pause the video, and solve that real quick. So hopefully you got 1.2x plus 172.4. So there's your equation. Now we can use that to answer our follow-up questions. So letter B says, what was John's weight after 12 weeks? So either I gave you an X or I gave you Y. Well, weeks is X, so this is your X value. So we're going to leave Y alone, but instead of X, we are going to use 12. And then we're going to work that out. We're going to work that out, and I believe you're going to get 186 point, I think it's 8. Yep, 186.8 pounds. So after that many weeks, that's approximately his weight. Letter C says, how much did John weigh just before he started his new routine? So it looks like we are finding weight, so weight is Y. If you're finding Y, that means I must have given you X, but you don't see a number, so you could use 0 for X. Okay, when in doubt, 0 is your way out. So if I put 0 in for X, I'm going to get 172.4. And of course, that's in terms of pounds. So at 0 weeks, or his starting out is 172.4. Now I do want to point out, you really didn't need to do work for this, because in your formula that you worked so hard to get, you have the slope and the starting amount, right? Second number is always the starting amount. So you actually knew that already. So you really don't have to do work for this, but if it's confusing and you want to stay consistent, that's fine. Use 0. And then it says, how long did it take John to weigh 200 pounds? So pounds is a y. So I'm giving you y. That means you find x. So I'm going to do 1.2x plus 172.4. All right, so there's your equation. Go ahead and solve it. So hopefully you subtracted, divided, and you end up with 23. And of course, that's in terms of weeks. So it'll take him 23 weeks to weigh 200 pounds. That's where I'm going to stop the video for today. And then the next video we'll pick up with a case 3 example.